You're listening to the How in the World podcast, where we tackle global issues and discuss how we as Christians can make a lasting difference. My name is Andrea Shabaglian, and I pastor in the heart of the Central Valley in beautiful California. I'll be sitting down with guests from every walk of life to discover innovative ways that we can make an impact. This is the How in the World podcast. Hey, this is Andrea Shabaglian, the host of How in the World podcast, where we talk and interview people from all over the world. And today we have an incredible guest with an incredible missionary heart, and you're going to love this episode. First, I want to welcome you, Andrea, for being here today.
Thank you, Pastor Rini, for having me.
Now, I love everything about what you're doing, and I thought you'd be the best one to explain what it is you do. And I'm excited to have you on the show. So pay close attention because this information is crucial. So Andrea, tell us what you do.
Yeah, so I am the founder of Made for Them. Made for Them is a social enterprise dedicated to combat human trafficking and to support the needs of survivors and those at risk. So we've been around for 10 years. We have a street outreach to a notorious area in our town called Parkway that is known for drug trafficking, sex trafficking, homelessness. We've had a street outreach in that area for 10 years, and we've had various services and direct services for survivors here, including counseling, case management, some project-based work experience. And just recently we launched an 18-month workforce reentry program to really walk along survivors to heal, empower, and employ.
Now, I have noticed, because even myself, this was a kind of a journey of information. Even the basic understanding of what does it mean, human trafficking. Most people just think human trafficking is someone who's undocumented and not getting paid a fair wage. That's kind of where it goes. So can you explain a little bit? Because I mean, just a little bit of research, you realize internationally, this is hundreds of billions of dollars made off of people that are being used and abused. And so can you explain a little bit more, what is human trafficking? What does that mean?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you addressing that. Really is a journey of information, right? It's a journey to understand. But human trafficking, it is an extremely lucrative criminal activity. It is a global epidemic and certainly touches the Central Valley here and all of the Western United States. So human trafficking in simple short form is the abuse of an individual for someone else's profit and personal gain. So that can look through various ways, such as sex trafficking, domestic servitude, labor trafficking, potentially could be the people selling the flowers on the street corners. We are in an ag community, so we know that we have forced labor here. Yeah. Massage parlors are also another vehicle. It can be definitely hidden in plain sight.
I was noticing as I looked at a map that the states with the highest amount of human trafficking tend to be the border states. So like Florida, Texas, Arizona, California, they have a huge, and of course Las Vegas, which is right next to California. So are those that are being trafficked, are they always from outside of our country, or do people born here get taken into human trafficking?
Oh, absolutely both and. So though Made for Them really gives attention to all forms of human trafficking, and we advocate obviously against all of those forms. We primarily work with those who are victims of sex trafficking, and for the most part, they've all been born, raised here in their city. Sometimes it's generational. There's a lot of factors. When we talk about a journey of information and just a journey in the education to deeper understanding, human trafficking is really just a byproduct of so many other factors: early childhood trauma, generational poverty, abuse, neglect. All of those play into and feed really the vicious cycle of an individual becoming vulnerable to becoming a victim of human trafficking. So we do see also within domestic servitude and forced labor that sex trafficking also is entangled within those as well. So it might not just be one form of the crime, there could be multiple within one individual's life.
I love the ability that you have to use words that make sense, because again, for me as a pastor, you're always trying to find out how you can do a better job of reaching people that are in need. And the one question I get all the time is what's the difference between someone who's in sex trafficking and a prostitute? Mm-hmm. Right? That's the word you hear all the time. Well, they're prostitutes. Mm-hmm. So help educate us a little bit on that difference, because words matter.
Yes, words do matter. So the difference between someone who you would say chooses the life of prostitution or someone who is a victim of sex trafficking. My journey of being educated in that process as well might differ from legal definitions.
Okay.
So I am going to say that those girls who are out there prostituting and saying they're there of free will, they really are still victims. They have been victims of abuse, neglect, and force in some form and fashion. So the legal definitions for trafficking, federally speaking, if law enforcement were to pull you over, there has to be force, fraud, or coercion involved in that case. Okay. So those are the indicators that law enforcement is going to look for as a person of faith and as an advocate. We have to look at the whole picture of their life. Has force, fraud, and coercion been at play much earlier on? And the answer is yes. So I would say that both are victims.
Mm-hmm. And the vast majority, at least when I was looking at statistics, when it comes to sex trafficking especially, 51% are underage, is what they're saying. Is that about accurate?
Under, yes.
So they are truly and criminally being used in any possible way. I mean, if they're underage, if they're children, that's a huge issue. And so these children, where do they come from? I mean, are they, because we've talked about how generational poverty robs people not just of finances, but of family. There could be relational poverty, emotional poverty, spiritual poverty, not just economic poverty. So where do these children come from?
Yes, so that's why we would also say parents get involved in your children's lives, be aware of what they're watching on TV, what's scrolling through their phones, but I would also encourage adults to be also vested into your children's friends and the other children that you have the opportunity to be around and do life with. Because there is sometimes lack of parental guidance and parental support in a lot of these families. So they often come from, it's a generational trap, and they get swept up into the life of being a victim of human trafficking, and that just continues to cycle itself from the next generation to the next generation. It can be girls who are looking for a sense of identity and worth because they're not receiving that at home, and certainly social media is not providing that. Right. Sometimes the need to constantly compare and to make sure that we're the young generation is sort of making the grade and looking a certain way and acting a certain way. That's a tremendous amount of pressure that God didn't design for young minds. And so then there's this entrapment of needing that identity. And so when our identity is not in Christ, we're looking for love, right? We're looking for affirmation. And those are good things. Those are natural things. It's natural to want to feel wanted and accepted. And if I'm not feeling wanted or accepted in home where I should be, then I'm going to look for that. And so we see our youth looking for that in the wrong places. And on the other side of that are traffickers who are waiting. They're waiting for opportunities to engage our youth and prey on their vulnerabilities. We all have vulnerabilities, and so that's where traffickers come in and prey on those vulnerabilities with our young kids. And it'll start in a simple Snapchat or a simple DM that just says, "Hey girl," or "like your profile pic." And it's just something as simple like that can just entrap a girl into feeling special and valuable and wanted. And then that becomes sometimes the vicious cycle and turns into a horrific situation.
That is like predators. They're like online predators.
Absolutely.
And, yeah. What is I was watching several women giving on YouTube, giving their survivors of sex trafficking, and they all used the same term, that they were ensnared by a Romeo. What does that mean?
So there's a couple different types of traffickers. So there would be a Romeo pimp or a guerrilla pimp. Okay. So I refrain from using the word pimp because sometimes that is sort of glamorized, right, because they are criminals, they are traffickers. Right. So a Romeo trafficker is someone who, sort of like the scenario I started with, right, like, "Hey girl, like you look so beautiful," and it starts as a relationship. And again, it's natural to desire that type of relationship. That's natural. Right. But when we don't have, maybe there's been, it's important to know too, this is a statistic that we share often, that 1 in 3 to 4 girls will be sexually assaulted or molested by the age of 18. Wow. 1 in 6 boys. So that was not God's design. So if that type of abuse comes in at such an early age, it shifts the psyche, right? It shifts the understanding of what is a safe, most of the time it's through someone they know. So what is a safe relationship? What is love? Has all been completely tainted. Yeah. So there's no real, a measure for what's a healthy relationship. And then we're also measuring it against social media and our movies these days, which is, off the charts. So then then this Romeo trafficker begins to pursue a young girl and tells her all the things that she wants to hear, that she's beautiful and he's going to protect her and he'll provide for her and he'll give her basically her princess story. And who doesn't want to hear those things? And so if home life is not good and your support system has been broken and sort of abandoned and abused, then this sort of Romeo who comes to sweep you off your feet and starts to buy you things or to even take you out to restaurants and places you've never experienced before. A Romeo trafficker will pursue you exclusive for a period of time, and then at some point there's a switch and bait, and then there's an ask for something that we just need a little bit of money, girl. Like, I lost my job, and there's this a psychology behind it all. Remember, it's a business, so it's lucrative, and they treat their victims as a profit, and so they're going to take the time to invest in their profit, and then abuse comes and so forth.
So why did you decide to engage in this? Mm-hmm. What caused you to say, okay, this is an overwhelming, gigantic issue, and why did you, Andrea, decide, okay, I'm going to be part of helping, be a solution here?
Well, Pastor Rini, you said it well when you said it's overwhelming. It's very overwhelming. But I am Really, it was a vision that God gave me, and it started. So we're a social enterprise. We launched with a clothing line. The original vision was to be a clothing line that provided resources and awareness. Early on, it provided a lot of things. It provided after-school sports programs, self-esteem classes for young girls. Human trafficking was one of them, and there was a lot of things I wanted to kind of just, be a philanthropist for. And in that journey, it was an 8-year process and journey before God said yes to Made for Them 10 years ago. So about 18 years I've had this, but in that season, God really just started honing it down and to know it's human trafficking, daughter. Right. That's what I want you to focus on. And then as I began to really understand what human trafficking is, I mentioned earlier, human trafficking is a byproduct. So if we don't have after school sports programs and you can go get caught up in wrong crowds and gangs, if you don't have self-esteem support for girls who are being abused and neglected at home, and their worth and their value is going to be found in a different type of identity. So I feel privileged that even in our prevention work, we do a lot of education prevention work, we get to invest in those pieces because if we can prevent a child, or we can remind them of their worth and identity in Christ, hopefully they can not go on a course that maybe was generational. So in this process, it was God, who am I? I have no big family name. I don't have, I'm not a trust fund baby. I don't have a lot of money. We don't come from a wealthy family. I was raised by a single mom, single income. I've worked most of my life. And so I don't have much, right? Yeah. And I don't have a background in trafficking or social work degree even, and I certainly don't even know fashion, and I don't have a degree there. So I'm marrying two things that I'm kind of foreign about, but I think that they could make a difference. And a long story short is, when you're in seasons and God is speaking to you, people will call you out of the woodworks and be like, I feel like I'm supposed to share this song with you, or this scripture with you, or I feel like I'm supposed to pray with you, or I saw this quote and I wanted to give this to you, right? And everything you read in scripture just jumps out to you, to care about the orphan and the widow, to care about justice, and then your light will shine brightly, and God just speaks to you through all those avenues. And then there was a quote that I heard, and I'm remiss because I say this often, but I don't ever go and find out who said it, but it was, I rather die trying than to have not tried at all.
I love that saying.
So I'm a young mom. My son is 3. My daughter was born in March. We launched in September 10 years ago, and it was like a fire shut up in my bones. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep at night. I'm wrestling. I'm waking up, and I'm just devastated knowing there's some form of safety for my children. And I just remember always looking at my daughter, and I would just start to bawl. And knowing that just even down my own street, there's not that safety for every child. And my knowledge of human trafficking, was not very broad, but I just knew that type of horrific abuse. How could I have some knowledge of it and not try to do something? I don't want to get on the side of my deathbed and have all my excuses ready for God. I didn't have this, and you didn't give me this, and you didn't, God, right? I wanted to say, God, I had a vision, and I gave what I had to make my life count,
Well, I want to get into the specifics of what more of the stuff you do, but first I want to say this. If you are enjoying this podcast, remember, hit the like button, share it, and subscribe. I know we have listeners in Germany, South Africa, Brazil, India, Indonesia. I know that we continue to go into other countries, other states, but it's important you hit the like button and that you subscribe so other people can hear about this, and we together can pull together a team of people internationally and locally through our nation, through our local city of Fresno, but it requires us to share this good news. So please take a second now, hit the like button, subscribe to the podcast, and share this with a friend, because there's some great information to come. So thank you, Andrea. Now you really, okay, look, let's get to the nitty gritty of this thing. I started years ago a recovery program here, and in my naivety and as a Christian, I thought, okay, you come with a drug addiction, I will pray and you will be healed. And then I realized it didn't work that way. That years of habits and brokenness and hurt people kind of thing, it was a devastating reality to realize I just can't pray for you and send you away. There's a journey. Now, that's just with a drug issue. I can't imagine being abused physically and emotionally. So tell me, how do you even begin the process of if you've rescued someone from human trafficking, from sex trafficking, where do you even begin to bring healing to them?
That's a loaded question, Pastor Reno.
Sorry.
Right. As a person of faith, I absolutely believe that the presence of God, is there for healing and comfort. But it's not always immediate, and there are always things to work through and process through, right? And God takes us from glory to glory, right? And even in the healing process, right? So the one thing that comes to mind, as I mentioned, we have a street outreach. So I have been showing up in this area for 10 years now and building relationships with these women. And, the three things that they always ask for is one, pray for my children. Right. Most of them all have children, right? That's the first thing. Pray for my children, or they're asking to pray for someone else. Okay? And the second thing is pray for my safety. The third thing is pray that I'll get out of here one day. So when you hear that all the time, you're like, okay, well, what's it going to take for you to get out of here? Because I'm saying you can come with me. We'll find you in a safe place to stay. We'll, work with you. And it's not always that easy, right? The individual, both the demonic and ties to this are very real, very, very real. And so it is a process of healing. And I just think about specifically some girls that I've known, honestly, walking Mercy Street, that's our street outreach, for 7 years, building a relationship with them. And they are now in our Workforce Academy. Right. But that took 7 years of just meeting them literally, physically where they are at. And loving them right there, right? Without shame or no judgment. And it's always like, hey, can I help you get a different job? Can I help you get out of this? And but
so it's not you just snatch them, put them somewhere, and everything's fine.
No, we've also had girls who've walked off and they've gotten in our car with us. And this actually just happened 2 months ago. And you knew she was so afraid, right? But the tie to that trafficker is very, very strong. The threats move from them to then people they love, including their children, right? So then you are stuck, or you feel stuck in that relationship for the safety of your children, or the safety of your siblings, or the safety of others. So there's a lot of psychology, tactics there, but then it's a journey, and it's really just meeting them where they at. And you have to, if you're in this, like you have to have this sense of compassion and patience that is long suffering and enduring, because it's a slow journey to really, I think the first goal is them finding their worth and value in Christ. They got to believe good things for themselves, and that's the starting point. And that's not an easy starting point. But if we can get to that space as the foundation, then we can bring in these great tools that are clinical and social, emotional, and trauma informed. And there's really great tools that we rely on, but the foundation has to be that.
And have you ever been threatened? Have you ever worried about your intervention in one of these individuals who, I would just say there's such great evil behind it. Have you ever felt like, okay, I'm in danger, or my people are in danger because we're making this kind of outreach?
So no, not on Mercy Street. I mean, we also have detectives who do part of that training with us. The traffickers, they don't, I mean, honestly, the traffickers are weak, right? And to be honest, they're victims themselves. Right. So they need their own healing and prayer. Absolutely. They need a support system, but they don't want to make a ruckus with us. Right. We're the church people, so that's why we're very, very respectful. Because we're not going to get the beat down. It's going to be the girl. So we're not out there aggressively at all. So that's that piece to the street outreach. But for the most part, no. I mean, we've never been threatened out there.
How does an average person recognize? What are the signs that someone's caught in trafficking?
Mm-hmm. So there's going to be a lot of different signs, but if you have a relationship with the individual, there's going to be a drastic change in personality. So it could go from depression, they're realizing sort of they're entrapped in a relationship they don't like. It could be the complete opposite, madly in love with this new relationship. And if we're speaking just specifically to sex trafficking, then there's a constant need to check their cell phone. They have to ask for permission before they can do anything. So there's going to be a change in friends, and this could be a really close circle of friends, and then all of a sudden, I got to check with my boyfriend. There might be some language that changes. If it's a minor and they weren't very sexually active or involved, but the language starts to change in that way, or they begin to be more excited about sort of new images and things like that on social media. If there's a change in appearance and how they dress, those are all going to be really for sure signs. If there's a new tattoo or markings, they get branded. So there are some physical things like that. Sometimes any sort of physical, because a lot of times the threats are, behind the scenes, and even with the physical markings, they could even be hidden underneath their clothes. So it's just about being involved and not afraid to ask questions. I believe strongly that the Holy Spirit is that gut feeling. And if we have a gut feeling about something that's just not off, maybe there's a reason. And for us to, I think, slow down. We are too fast in society. We're too afraid to actually get involved because we don't feel like how am I going to solve this problem? I don't know what to do. I mean, you don't have to know what to do. But if you have an unction about something, make a phone call to law enforcement. They are trained and equipped to come and just be present. And so you don't have to feel like you're going to solve it or have to be right there. But if you feel like there's something that's off, slow down, give that some time to sink in, and do the right thing and make a phone call.
I was looking up again online, and I think we have it posted in our office here. There's a human trafficking hotline, 888-373-7888. We'll put that in the link. 888-373-7888. It's a human trafficking hotline. So wherever you are in the country, you can call that hotline. Tell me about your core academy. It's creating opportunity to restore and employ.
Yes.
So explain that to me. That sounds pretty exciting.
Yeah. So like I mentioned, I would take some of these girls to Denny's. I'm like, look, you've told me now for a couple of years. Like,
I love Denny's, by the way.
Sorry. I don't know. We should maybe not plug different restaurants. I would sit down with these girls for meal, and say, look, I've known you. Like, what's it going to take, right? And there's addiction and that's also involved too, but it was a job. How am I going to get a job? Who's going to hire me? I have a record. So recently we actually just passed a bill that helps with the record expungement process to clear that. But okay, you're right. Who's going to hire you? Because we got to work on some work experience that is hireable. And so we were introduced to the Homeboy Industries out of Los Angeles. They are phenomenal. They're the global leaders in re-entry for previously incarcerated gang members. So similar backgrounds, similar barriers to move forward. And I just saw the need for jobs and workforce. So we did small projects. And I remember one girl, we were making soaps, and she was doing some office hours. And her first check, just kind of how it lined up was for $40. And she cried. And she said, I never thought I would see my name on a check.
Wow.
And that moment is like this holy moment of this is the real work right here. Yeah. This is what we need to do for affirmation. So our passion is employment, but we want you to have a career that you're going to thrive in and you're good at because it's what God has made you to do. So in order to do that, we need to have a healing space. So let's work with the Lord. Let's work with our tools. We have, licensed clinical therapists that, we work with weekly in case management, but let's work on these things and find a healing time. You need it. You deserve it. And let's just have that space for healing. And in that, let's discover your strengths. So what are your strengths? What are you good at? And if you discover something you really don't like and you're poor at, that's still a win because you just kind of cross that off and you narrow more your road. So, but we're all about asset-based environments. So what are your assets? What are you good at? And then we have a really great staff member, associate director, then to be able to partner your skill sets and strengths. We have our own social enterprises, so you get to, utilize all of those strengths in our work environment that is safe. And we say, hey, fail on us. This is a space for you to fail on us. Because when you graduate and we've matched now your skill sets and strengths to a career path that you choose, we're going to be behind you 100%, say this is a good hire. But now you have some healing. You've been empowered personally that is going to affect you. And so now when you get hired and you work with your employer, you are now more poised to climb that ladder, to stay on your job, and to continue to be successful in life. That's the goal of the Core Academy.
And how long is it?
So it's an 18-month. Okay. The class space is, but we have obviously services well after the 18 months.
Now, the first time I met you, maybe not the first time, but one of the significant meetings we had with, I think it was most of your board and some of the Valley Dream Center board, you made a statement which I have seen to be absolutely true about yourself, that you have a gift of great faith. And you have also a visionary gift. So let's pretend you had opportunity to do all the things that you would love to see done. Name the things you would love to see in the next 5 years. Let's say someone wrote you a check of a lot of money. What are the things that you would do that you feel like these are really necessities that I'm going to believe for, I have faith for, and can you express those in detail to us? What are the things you're looking for?
I wish you would have prepared me for this question because I do dream big, because I serve a big God who has created a lot for us. But a quick answer is that we would invest heavily in our social enterprises and a very robust housing program. So we need strong social enterprises and businesses so that those can grow. One, so that we're sustainable, but two, that we have various employment opportunities for our students, and as well as being able to hire more and bring on more students. And then for housing, we would have lots of phases in the actual housing and transition from immediate needs, say off of the street, to that healing space, to interim, and then and transitioning at graduation for long-term living into home ownership.
And because of the fragileness of those, the fragile state of those you're working with, there definitely needs to be, you just can't throw them in an apartment complex with a bunch of people. There's certain security and privacy issues that need to happen. Explain that and why.
Yeah, absolutely. And it depends where the individual is at, in their journey, of course. But I mean, immediate need would be, I think, of security and healing space. So to be removed, I mean, ideally it would be great if we had students coming from areas outside of the Central Valley, and we had partners, that we were sending our women outside of the Central Valley, so that the temptations of what is normal and the distractions of what we know is going on is removed. So if we can remove those barriers, and it's not forever, it's not a forever thing, but it is for survivors to give themselves permission for that healing space. That's hard. It's hard for, I'm not completely healthy. I'm halfway healthy, and it's hard for me to give myself permission to have self-care, or permission to, take time for myself. So those are the types of things that we need on the early end of housing.
Sure.
And then, transitional through, like, how do you learn how to pay your own bills and make your own meals and grocery shop and all those things that come with domestic living when you are caring for the house and your children, and you're not living in sort of a food desert area. And a food desert area means you're not close to fresh vegetables or a grocery store. It's, it's the liquor store or the fast food drive-through. So helping you, learn some of those domestic skill sets, instill that safe, trauma-informed learning environment is also very important. With community, I think there's still a need for community at that point, because, also they have to build new relationships, new social circles. So there's so many layers that take place at one time. So they need prayer. We all need prayer. But and then, just continual transition into more independent living, into apartment living, into, home ownership.
So there's housing, there's counselors, there's basic training, there's clothing, there's food, there's a job vocational training. So it just goes on and on and on. That's why you need a large amount of the community to invest, because it isn't just handing out turkeys at Thanksgiving. This is an entire rebuilding.
And I would say that's what sets us even apart from different street outreaches is the consistency. So we're not like a one-off street outreach. I just, there are some who are out there and it's great and it has its purpose, right? One body, many parts. So for us, it's about building relationships. They trust me because white girl just kept showing up, and so that took time, right? But that took sacrifice for me. I'm a mom of 2 kids.
Sure.
I'm married to a pastor, and there's lots of other stuff in my other parts of my world that have to be sacrificed to make a commitment. So,
that's right. Yeah, a mom, a wife. Yeah, that's a lot to add to your plate.
Yeah, but I also just want to note, because you you said all the things I've said, and I thought, it sounds so overwhelming and daunting, and it is like that, but the way we've created specifically the Core Academy is that we're going to meet you where you're at, really always throughout the process, but we're going to meet you where we're at, and we start the Core Academy between 2 and 3 days, so depending where they're at, and then it's a gradual increase to 5 full working days. So the first few days, and part of the Academy is more program focused, more therapeutic. It might be our art therapy class, yoga, Zumba. You're going to have your strength finders early on, some self-regulation skills. Licensed counseling and case management are always with that, but it's just this gradual onboarding, right? It's not like you're getting too much too fast. So we are trying to be very thoughtful in that space.
So let's say someone is wanting to either volunteer, partner with you, financially support you. Where do they go? Who do they talk to, and how do they do it?
Yes.
And we'll list all of this. It'll be listed in the comments. So you'll have this. Whatever she says, we'll list. So don't worry about writing it down. It'll be in the comment section. Go ahead.
Thank you, Pastor Rini. Yes, we need volunteers. We need just people to care. We have been so fortunate to really be sustained in 10 years, mostly because volunteers. that says a lot for our community. That says a lot for really incredible people with big hearts. We need help with childcare. We need help with mentorship. We need help just with events and fundraising. We need help in the office. So there's really so many areas to be involved. I'm a big proponent of one body, many parts. So let's find out what you're passionate about and what is that part in the body, because most certainly we can use it at Made for Them. So it's a matter of matching you, because it is heavy work. It's hard work. It's not easy. It's very emotionally invested, spiritually invested, mentally invested. And I'll be honest to say, oftentimes it comes with spiritual attacks, because I'm not afraid to be the light in the darkness, and we are taking back God's daughters from the grip of the enemy's hand.
Yes.
That's real work. So I would say that that's a part of that. And so we want to make sure that all of our volunteers, people who partner with us, partner in a space that they are strong at and good at, so that they enjoy it and they can thrive in that. So we would, so go to our website, madeforthem.org. Connect with us. There's a volunteer interest form, and we kind of do then an interview with you, make sure you're trained. There's a background check, depending especially where you're volunteering and working.
And you are expanding right now. You're partnering with the Valley Dream Center. You're doing some tenant improvement work right now. I bet right now a check for $25,000 would be really nice from someone. I just feel like someone heard me say that, and the Lord just spoke to you, and you want to give them a check for $25,000 to help them pay for the tenant improvement. So I'm just saying that because I know someone knows exactly what they're supposed to do with this. So madeforthem.org, madeforthem.org. Okay, I want you to take a moment and just talk directly to those that are watching, and just tell them, give them hope, because with this international issue, people making billions of dollars, it's easy to feel like I just can't do anything. It's too big for me. I can't make a difference. Convince someone watching right now that they can make a difference.
I'm going to start with maybe something that was a little more harsh that propelled me actually early on. And it's by Gary Haugen. He is the founder of International Justice Mission. And when I first got started, I threw myself into a couple of his books, and he has this book called Just Courage. And it is really for the wrestling Christian who wants to kind of go on an adventurous journey with God. And I think our lives should be an adventurous journey with the Lord. In one of the chapters, he talks about all the excuses that we give as believers. I don't have this, I'm not that, I don't have the time, I don't have the resources, I don't know. And he goes through all that, and he just then says, your excuses really aren't that interesting to Jesus. And so I think that if God is putting this on your heart, he will certainly equip you. He will certainly give you vision and hope. And I can promise it won't be easy, but I can promise you that the reward is storing up treasure in heaven that you may not ever experience here, but the reward is significant. And it really is our walk in this life. It's one life at a time, right? So broad is the road and wide is the gate that leads to death, and many enter through it. Narrow is the road and small is the gate that leads to life, and only a few find it. And so if you're committed to that narrow road and pulling others on that narrow path with us, then Jesus will give you everything that you need. He's given us everything we need for life and godliness. And I just cannot tell you the deep joy that I have in being able to serve these women. And they're mothers. Most of them are mothers of 2 and 5 children. And to have the opportunity to invest in their life and to love them like Jesus does, to remind them of their worth and their value, to be able to sit with them and to laugh and learn their stories, and to cook with them and literally share family recipes. I mean, simple things, it doesn't have to be complicated. But these women, we work with, primarily women and children. These women need support system. They need aunties, they need grandmas, they need all of us to come in and just love them where they're at and continue to show them the journey in life in Jesus. And so if God is stirring your heart, I would just say reach out to us now. And if you're not in our area, find a local agency. And if it's not even an anti-trafficking agency, become a volunteer at a Big Brothers Big Sisters, a Girl Scouts, a Boy Scouts. Invest in your local community where there's poverty. That is what I would encourage you to do. I see more Jesus on the streets of our sort of poverty-stricken areas than I do in most of my church sittings. So if you really want to see Jesus, and this is what he came for the sick, right? And so I just, I don't know, so if you are interested in getting involved in someone else's life, it's a sacrifice, but it is worth it. And Jesus reminds me all the time that he came to serve and not to be served. And that, I have to believe, is the most rewarding part of life.
That was beautifully said. Well done, Andrea. Thank you for being here today.
Pastor Rini, thank you for this opportunity. Yeah. And we just want to say thank you for the partnership with Valley Dream Center. We are beyond excited. There is such a collision of visions, and we are very, very excited for that. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
For that step of faith with us.
Absolutely. And so remember, hit the like button, subscribe, send it to your friends. Let's help Andrea, and we will work together as partners. But you got to share this, you got to like it, and you got to subscribe. And thank you again for tuning in for a How in the World podcast. You have an incredible day.